I feel like a different person for 1 week a month, and I hate who that person is. You don't have to ask yourself those questions anymore. You don't have to be that person anymore. And I'm living proof that you can come out of it. I like to call it PMS on crack cocaine. PMDD is a cyclical, severe form of premenstrual symptoms.
Are you tired of the overwhelm and the nonstop anxiety and ready for simple, doable steps to beat burnout, support your body naturally, and process the heavy emotions through a biblical lens? Then you're in the right place. I'm Cassie, wife, mom of 5 home-birthed babies, and a trauma-informed women's health coach who crawled out of deep burnout myself. I learned how to rebuild my energy and my identity from the ground up. If you're ready for steadier energy, emotional stability, and joy that doesn't evaporate by noon, then grab your not coffee, take that one quiet breath you're going to get for the day, and let's dive in. Because if you're waiting for a perfect moment, you might as well pencil it in for never.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Christian Wellness for Weary Women. I'm your host, Cassie Hutton, and I'm so excited you're here today. This episode, 103, is a sequel basically to last week. I knew I was going to do this, but I didn't give you a teaser last week, so I'm so sorry. But we're going to talk more about intrusive thoughts, but as it pertains to your cycle. Why you have the intrusive thoughts, why you have the self-sabotaging moments, why we experience PMS. But we're going to take it even further. We're going to take it to what's called PMDD, which is basically PMS on crack, okay? PMS on crack is what we call PMDD. It stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder is a very dark place. It's a very terrible thing to live with. But you don't have to live with it. That's the thing. You don't have to live with it. I don't care if you've had it from the time of your very first period until you are 45. You don't have to live with it. Now, if you've lived with it for that long, it might take a little bit longer to get out of. But from what I've experienced, you do not have to live with it. It doesn't have to be a recurring thing that you experience every month because your hormones are off or because you have a mental disorder. No, in fact, you can fix it. You can fix it with nutrition. You can fix it with food, you can fix it with supplements, and we can target how to fix it and exactly what's driving it through hair tissue mineral analysis or HTMA testing, which is what I offer. Hair tissue mineral analysis looks at basically what's going on at a cellular level. We're looking at what's in the tissues of the body. Most of the time we're testing for the blood, what's in the blood. But when we test for what's going on in the tissues, we're testing on a much deeper level, and we're seeing where your body's been depleted for a very long time. We're not just looking at what's homeostatic anymore. We're going way deeper, diving deeper, and trying to figure out where your mineral status has gone wrong, because your minerals are what convert most of the things in the body. Not everything, but a lot of things. Because why? Going back to Genesis, God made us from the dust. He gathered up the dust and he formed man. And so because that is what we are formed from, that is the very baseline of everything that happens synergistically in the body on a biological level. But then it contributes to these mental disorders that we're classified under when clearly it's a hormonal issue going on, but there's something else driving the hormone issue. You're not just a sensitive person all of a sudden, or in my case, it was an all of a sudden thing. You're more sensitive than other people when your cycle starts to hit because of the hormone fluctuations. No, you actually have a biological issue going on. And we're going to talk about that. So, can you actually fix, let's not even go to PMDD. Let's talk about PMS. Can you actually fix the PMS issues each month? Yes, you can. And we're going to talk about how you can do that. Is it actually your hormones? Or are you actually losing your mind? Which one is it? Because it definitely happens around your cycle, but why is it classified as a mood disorder if it's clearly linked to my hormones? Now I feel even crazier because I'm told when I go to my doctor that this issue that arises each time when I'm clearly about to start my cycle, oh, it's actually just a depression disorder. You're just major depressive right before you start your period. That's interesting. Okay. Why does the same small thing wreck me completely the week before my period? I feel like a different person for 1 week a month, and I hate who that person is. You don't have to ask yourself those questions anymore. You don't have to be that person anymore. And I'm living proof that you can come out of it. So here's what I want to define first. What is PMS compared to PMDD? So most of us are going to experience PMS symptoms. What PMS symptoms are, we're going to experience both the physical factors, the cramping, the bloating, the feeling like we're going to start our period. Like you just feel it. You know you're about to start your period. You have low energy. But then there's a psychological factor. Now I'm moody. Now I'm raging at everyone. Now I have self-sabotaging thoughts. Now I have intrusive thoughts. And it's boom, hits right before a period. But they're not debilitating. They don't take you down into a spiral where you have suicidal thoughts, or what's the dysphoria part of it in the acronym, the dysphoric part of the disorder. And so the difference between them is that I like to call it PMS on crack cocaine. PMDD is a cyclical, severe form of premenstrual symptoms, classified, though, which is just crazy to me, as a depressive disorder. So in other words, they're not going to say, well, we need to fix your hormones. They're going to say, oh, no, you just need to take some antidepressants for it, which is going to further wreck everything going on in your body and overburden your liver, which is basically a lot of where this starts. About 2 to 8% of menstruating women meet the criteria for PMDD. However, I would say it's probably more than that because, like me, I didn't go to the doctor to become a statistic to be told to take a pill that's never going to fix my issue. I'm just saying, stop going to the doctor. Start doing your own research. Find someone who's not of the normal Western medical world, because most likely that's not going to fix your issue. I don't care how serious it is. It's basically the same general timing as PMS in the luteal phase, that 1 week before your period starts, but the intensity of it is what separates it from being classified as PMS. The dysphoria is a state of profound unease, sadness, or dissatisfaction. It's not just feeling off, but a heavy, unsettled emotional weight that basically mutes the color in every aspect of your life. In PMDD, dysphoria shows up alongside other symptoms like emotional swings that flip very fast, irritability and anger that create real conflict, a lot of anxiety, a lot of hopelessness, and a feeling of being out of control of your own reactions. Very much so. I'm going to go into a little bit more of my story in a minute. So this is what separates just PMS, low energy. I'm going to get really irritable because I'm doing too much because my energy is so low, to I can spiral out of control at any given moment. The symptoms are severe enough to disrupt work, relationships, daily functioning, and they likely follow a predictable on-off pattern, definitely tied to your cycle. Okay? Unfortunately, but that is the main thing. And so the key distinction, if you feel like you have maybe more symptoms tied to PMDD, is that you literally feel like a different person for a week, maybe even a little bit longer, heading into your period. And then that person basically becomes a very scary person to you. You're scared of your own thoughts. You're scared that you might not be able to get out of it. It feels like you won't be able to get out of it. It's a very deep, dark hole. It's very, very real and definitely deserves an explanation. It doesn't deserve just a label, although that might help you. A lot of people, when they get a diagnosis, it seems to help them. I self-diagnosed, but it's not fun. Not fun. And so if you find yourself at that place, I want to encourage you to reach out to somebody, definitely get some testing done, whatever you feel is the right type of testing for you. And don't settle for the answer that it's just a mood disorder. There's definitely something deeper going on. And we're going to touch on what that is here in just a minute. So for my story and where I hit these spiraling moments were 8 weeks postpartum, if you followed along with the podcast at all, then you know that 8 weeks postpartum after my fourth baby is when I started bleeding irregularly. So I bled for a full 6 weeks after her, which is not normal. So in other words, my body didn't have the resources to heal. So if you bled for a lot longer with one of your babies, again, that's not normal. Either you're overworking yourself, which I was also doing, and you're not resting enough because it's a scab that needs to heal inside the body. So every time you're moving and working, that scab where the placenta was delivered is not getting adequate space to heal. And so it's a wound that you're constantly ripping open. So rest, rest, rest for sure until your bleeding stops. You rest until that bleeding stops. But then 8 weeks postpartum, I was bleeding again. And I was like, wow, my body must be confused from nursing because all of a sudden she was sleeping through the night and then she wasn't. And I was like, is this my body just a little bit confused about what's going on? And then 2 weeks later, my cycle hit again. And then the tears came, the sadness came, the self-sabotaging thoughts came, the spiraling out of control came. And then turning to lean onto my husband would ignite anger and rage. And then all of these emotions would begin to surface. And I would recall all kinds of things that didn't bother me, but I had really stuffed down. They had worked themselves to the surface. And I was forced to deal with them. I was forced to start addressing them with my husband, talking to my husband about them. And it didn't come out in a pretty way because obviously I was in a raging fit. And that's when these things would come up. And I would try to bring them up to him, or I was just emotionally wrecked for the day and trying to express to him, or I really wouldn't express to him. I would just shut down and my head would go down. I would just turn into a cocoon because it was finally like while I was projecting a lot of emotion throughout the day. It's like when he would come home, I would turn inward, and it was almost a very vindictive cycle of I need him to see that something's wrong. I need him to be the one to come pick me up. I don't want to have to say anything to him about it. But then when I would try to say something about it, it just would turn. Okay. It just would turn. And I know I've mentioned this over the last few weeks, like it just sounds terrible. But we have definitely worked through lots and lots of things. And the truth is that he cared a whole lot. And he wanted to understand. He just did not have it. Like he did not have it within him to understand. It was like brick wall. There just was no figuring it out. Okay. And which was sad. So sad because I needed him so bad, but it just wasn't there. And so some of the things with cycling every 2 weeks is that I was trying to also learn about my cycle at the time. Okay. So here I was for the first time in my life trying to actually track my cycle, but yet I was so irregular that I couldn't actually track my cycle. But I started to recognize that I have about a 2 to 3 day window where I actually have quite a bit of energy, or at least a lot more energy than I do during those other 10 days and really like 11 days. And so I would try to cram everything into that time and get everything done. And at the time I was like wanting to make everything from scratch and getting into sourdough and getting into gardening. And we had a milk cow. And oh my gosh, I remember, because my husband goes to auctions. He sells, trades equipment, and he's at an auction every weekend for sure, if not staying the night overnight for the weekend and doing what he does. And I remember we had the cow, and we had also bought a milking machine, and she wasn't quite fully trained to the milking machine. And you only had a short window of time at that time when we were training her and really trying to figure it out. And if I didn't get my short window of time while she was eating the milking machine on correctly, then it was not going to go good. And I just remember, and it's so interesting to look back at now and be like, wow, I don't feel that at all. I wouldn't have any of this anxiety. I wouldn't have any of this overwhelm. I wouldn't feel like I just felt like I was on eggshells. I don't even know if eggshell's the right word, but I remember going out there to try to milk her that day, and I lost it I was in tears. I couldn't get it going. It was doom and gloom. All I could see was that nothing was going to work. I was not going to do this correctly. And then I was going to prove the narrative in my mind, right? I was going to prove to myself that what I thought was going to happen is going to happen. And I do remember getting on the phone with my husband at that point and him just calming me down. I do remember this. He did actually calm me down in this moment and walk me through it and tell me that it was going to be okay. And even if you don't get milk today, it's going to be okay. And I got through it. I remember getting the milk and everything was fine, but I was so depleted that my body did not have the wherewithal to even go out and milk the cow. And everything caused me anxiety because I didn't have the capacity to hold any kind of stress. I didn't have the capacity to hold any type of trigger. So triggers for me, and this has been all of my motherhood, I struggle intensely with the newborn stage. Not necessarily those first 2 weeks, maybe not even the first month, but when they get to that point where they are so hard to get down and put to sleep, when they get to a point where naps are a struggle and they're going through some sleep regressions, that is when anything can trigger me, but especially a crying baby that I cannot console. And then you're isolated alone, that is a huge trigger. And then on top of that, if it was leading into a cycle, there was almost nothing that I could do. There was such dark moments that would come over me that are hard to think about now. And they're sad to think about. They're sad to think about that other moms are dealing with that and going through that, isolated and alone. And it's not in burnout, though. It's different than just a postpartum depression. It's a very helplessness state and hopelessness. And so if you find yourself in that place, I just really encourage you to reach out to me. My email is contact@cassiehutton.com. You can come join my Facebook group. Tell us your story. Let us know what's going on. It's the name of the podcast, Christian Wellness for Weary Women. You can come and join the Facebook group. Let us be there. Let us be a light for you. Come tell your story. Find some people who are going through what you're going through and to speak hope into your situation, because it really does feel like a hopeless situation, especially if you don't know what I'm teaching you here on this podcast, which is nutrition and mineral balance specifically. And so that's what we're going to get into here next, is the difference between the mainstream explanation and then what I'm going to teach you about the upstream actual root cause of where PMDD actually comes from. And so PMDD is officially, again, in the DSM, classified as a depressive disorder. And the common explanation is that a woman's hormone levels are normal and that PMDD happens because she is simply more sensitive to that normal shift than other women. But that explanation has also been criticized by clinicians and researchers as a label that can make women definitely feel mentally ill rather than, obviously, depleted. But that's what it is. It's a depletion story. It's a depletion factor. It definitely comes out, okay? The manifestation is a mood disorder. You come out with rage and your head just spiraling. But the upstream is something totally different. It's not just a mood disorder. It's not just something that you can fix in your brain, okay? And so here's the thing, is that your hormones are not just being reacted to differently. They are actually altered. Even if your hormones are coming back normal, going into your cycle, which is another thing. If you're having blood tests done, you need to know when and at what point are you testing your hormones in your cycle. Because if you're testing it right before your period, then yeah, you're not going to have any progesterone or estrogen in that blood draw, okay? So ideally, probably if you're going to have your blood drawn, if you can do it, at different stages of the month, that would be great. But if you're going to just do it once a month, then try to do it during ovulation time, where you can see if your hormones are really peaking at that peak time during your monthly cycle. But here's the kicker, is copper is what I really want to focus on today. So copper interacts directly with estrogen. And when copper is elevated, or we also what's called hidden copper or biounavailable copper, it can drive estrogen way too high, which is then going to deplete progesterone, which is super important when you're going into your cycle, right before your cycle. If you don't have enough progesterone, that can also affect the mood disorders because it's a very calming hormone, whereas estrogen is the hormone that you're going to experience during ovulation. And during ovulation time is when you want to talk to more people, you have more energy, you want to go out, you want to be, you want to do, you want to create. But when progesterone is that leading hormone during the second half of your cycle leading up to your period, if it depletes too much and you don't have a really healthy ovulation, because the egg, when it dissolves, that's what produces the progesterone. So if you don't have a healthy ovulation, you're not going to produce enough progesterone going into your cycle, and that can also affect it. So whenever copper is high, it also drives estrogen too high. And so if you have a whole lot of estrogen and not enough progesterone, you are looking for a very bad situation, which most of us are going to experience because there are so many xenoestrogens that we're exposed to every single day through our foods, especially if you're eating anything with any type of junk in it, preservatives in it, if you're putting on perfumes every day and different types of just things on your body, like your makeup and your body, your hair care, your body products, all of those things. If you're not really buying a clean product and it has tons of these synthetic estrogens in it, and for women, that's a huge deal. It's going to drive your estrogen higher, which is going to drive your copper higher. And so then that copper gets stuck in the tissues, and the brain is a tissue. The liver is a tissue. And those two in particular, the copper really loves those two. And so when you're talking about copper and the liver, you're talking about a lot of iron issues going on and a very overburdened liver. So copper also interferes with how estrogen is metabolized and used in the body. And so again, even when blood work looks within normal range. So this is not just a sensitivity issue layered on top of normal hormones. No. The hormones themselves are being pushed off balance by an underlying mineral pattern. And so if you're a person who is very sensitive to birth control messes with estrogen, and therefore estrogen and copper are messing back and forth with each other. And so it is throwing all of your hormones off balance, even if they're telling you that they're normal. Nothing normal about not having a cycle or about not ovulating, first of all. And so if you're forcing yourself with birth control not to ovulate and to have a period at a certain time, there's nothing normal about that. And so if you're reacting to birth control, there's I did. I was on it for maybe 6 months at one point, and it was terrible for me. Not only that, it was just a reminder of all the terrible choices I had made in my life. And so I could not take it at all, but it did make me a crazy person. But yeah, it messes with estrogen, and therefore it messes with copper. Okay. I'm going to keep saying that over and over. So you're not just too sensitive to a normal process, and you are not mentally ill. Copper is a driving force behind why your hormones are off in the first place. And then there's also cofactors to copper. So if your copper is off, it's not just because you've taken birth control or just because your estrogen's too high and you've been exposed to it all your life. There's other cofactors too, like definitely looking at your first 4 minerals: calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. Those are all 4 minerals that we must look at even before we look at copper. And then you've also got other minerals like manganese and molybdenum. Both of those are a huge cofactor in metabolizing copper and making sure that copper is getting placed where it needs to go. And then obviously if the cells don't have just the proper hydration that they need between sodium and potassium, then that means that nutrients like copper aren't getting into and out of the cells, and all of the things that the body just needs in order to basically communicate can get off. And copper can be one of those things. So let's talk about copper and the luteal phase. So copper and estrogen feed each other. Rising estrogen increases copper retention, and elevated copper drives estrogen even higher. So if copper is already elevated, then this monthly hormonal shift is not a normal fluctuation for her. It is amplified by the mineral imbalance underneath it. Rising copper, this is a big one as well, also drives down zinc. But let me talk about that because I said drives it down. So that means that we would think we would see zinc as lower than copper on an HTMA test when it comes back, but that's not always true. We could see really high really high zinc. And zinc is one of those minerals that can be lost in the body. And so when we see really high zinc and low copper, we can probably consider that copper is bound up in the tissues because zinc is being lost. And that can be a key indicator that, yes, we've definitely got some bound up copper in the tissues going on, and we need to help the body utilize zinc better, and as well as some other minerals in the body to start pushing out copper from the tissues. And there's actually a real thing called copper dumping, and people can kind of go crazy when their body begins to dump copper. But I will say, if you work with me, we do everything in a very gentle way to make sure that your body doesn't actually do that copper dumping in a way that sends you into greater overwhelm and wreck everything out and make you feel like you're totally going backwards. I can say that did not happen with me because I did everything low and slow and gradual. Zinc and B6 are both required for GABA production. So this is the brain's main calming neurotransmitter. And without enough GABA activity, the brain loses its ability to actually downshift and soothe itself and regulate emotional intensity. And so copper drives, or it's basically antagonistic with zinc as well as vitamin B6. And so again, if you have way high copper, it's antagonistic to the zinc, and you can see where it's driving it down. So the zinc deficiency from rising copper happens specifically in the luteal phase, the same window where PMDD symptoms show up. So this is not random timing and all of a sudden you just lose your mind every month. It's actually the mineral mechanism behind the timing. Your mood is not falling apart for no reason once a month. Your calming neurotransmitter system is being crowded out by a copper-zinc imbalance every single cycle. Even if it was like me and you were cycling every 2 to 3 weeks. This is likely what's going on. And I will say this because it is also important to help the body detox. And if the liver's overburdened and you've got that high copper count and bound up copper going on, and then just all of the toxins from our environment going in, your liver can be overburdened. So it can be super helpful to start with the liver. Start with some warm lemon water in the morning, with some good Celtic salt or a Redmond salt or some kind of pink salt that has those other minerals with it so that everything is absorbed well. But that's one thing that you can do to support bowel flow and to get your vitamin C in for the day and to really support the liver in detoxification. Deep breathing. The lungs are a great way to detox. Lots of deep breathing through the day, making sure you're holding your breath and tensing up whenever you get stressed out. All of these things simple, doable things that you can do to start helping your body to detox. One thing that was suggested to me was to up my fiber. And while I think that was a good suggestion, I also clearly had some gut issues going on. So if you find yourself in this place with this mood disorder, quote, air quotes if you're watching me on YouTube, mood disorder, you've definitely got some gut health issues going on. And so upping your fiber is actually going to increase gut inflammation. And so it can actually be really helpful to up things like healthy fats, cut out fiber so that those fats go in and they can soothe the gut lining and actually help the body detox better. It also helps bowel flow and so many other things. You're going to have bioavailable copper in those animal fats and so many other vitamins and minerals that are essential for getting the liver back to detoxing again. And when you're cutting out fiber, basically fiber can act like sandpaper on the gut. I did a whole episode on this. I believe it's episode 72 If you want to go listen to I believe it's called the fiber, anyways, the truth about fiber, basically, and there may have been more than one episode on it, but I talk about how fiber can actually act like sandpaper on the gut because we get, it can feed good bacteria, but it can also feed bad bacteria. And so when you've got a lot of gut health issues going on, fiber can be one of those things that you can actually cut out and then add back in later after you give your gut a good rest. That can be very helpful because it was suggested to me to up my fiber to help bind to copper right before my period started so that my body could detox it. And I don't know that actually helped. That probably, and it was from someone that I love and I still follow, and I hang on to every word that she says, but I've also learned what fiber can do to the gut. So I'll just say that. Because symptoms are cyclical and women are told that it's just hormones and to wait it out, I don't think that this is very helpful for women at all. Symptoms can be extremely severe and emotional. Women are told that it can be a mental health issue. It can be a hormone issue. Just go walk it off. Just go get you some sunshine. All of this skips the mineral pattern entirely. And again, it's like the upstream of what's going on. So if you have a mood disorder that's happening around your cycle, part of the upstream is hormones. But really the hormones are off because you have a mineral imbalance. And if we don't address that mineral imbalance and other things that are going on all at the same time, like gut health, then it's never going to fix itself. So you either feel like a slave to your body or like something is wrong with your mind. And neither of those labels give you something that you can actually act upon, right? Fix your hormones. Well, how am I supposed to do that? Oh, I can show you. Through HTMA testing, I can give you exactly what you need to fix your hormones. It's amazing. Copper and zinc are extremely important in the hormone regulation. In fact, it is called the hormone ratio on the test. And so here's my suggestions for you. Here's your takeaways for today. If you experience PMDD, number one, you need to start tracking your cycle. Track your cycle. If you don't, just start doing it. I just keep it. I tracked it for a while in the Flow app, and then I think I tried another app. But what I do now is I go into my Apple Calendar and I put in the day that I start my period. And then I would track it for a couple of months. The day that I start my period, I would say cycle started. And so then after about 3 months, I would say, okay, how long in between each of my cycles, how many days in between each of my cycles? And so then I would set it in my calendar to show me. So if it's like 27 days, then I would say cycles, I would go into my cycle starts, and then I would say repeat every 27 days. And so now I can look at my whole year and kind of at least basically see, because mine will fluctuate every now and then, 26 days, 28 days, 29 days. Okay. If you're working out, you're going to have a longer cycle likely because the body needs a lot of that progesterone because the body uses a lot of progesterone whenever you're exercising. So you may have a longer cycle, or you may notice that your cycle shifts because you start exercising and working out, things like that. But anyways, start tracking your cycle. That's very important. And start noticing when your symptoms begin to intensify around that luteal phase specifically. And then consider an HTMA test so we can look at your actual copper levels, your zinc levels, and all of those other minerals that really matter. And then look at copper sources that you may have not considered. So obviously a copper IUD, like and hormonal birth control. Are you consuming really high copper foods? I mean, if you're eating like a ton of beef liver, then that could be a contributing factor. But most likely it's that you're being exposed to xenoestrogens. So take out all of your synthetic body sprays, your perfumes, your makeup. I know that's a lot. But those things are out there. It's a really easy fix. Like, they still have fragrances in them, but Native is a good brand at Walmart. The Truly Free from Amazon. I think that's the Amazon brand, Truly Free. Start following people on Instagram like The Natural Minded Mama. She makes amazing recommendations that you can get off of Amazon that are all low tox, chemical free, amazing options that she puts out there. That's where some of the things that I've not been able to find or that I tried one thing and that didn't work, like deodorant. She suggested some things and I'm like, okay, I'm running with that one. And so here's some things that I want to ask you. What would change for you if you stopped bracing for 1 week a month and started understanding what your body actually needs during it? What does your body need throughout the month? Each and every week, you're entering into you're going into your winter phase. Your period starts at your winter phase. You're coming out of your period. That next week is your fall. Ovulation is your summer. And then you have spring. And then you're going back into, did I say that right? Fall, winter. You have your different seasons throughout your cycle, with your period being your winter season and your ovulation being your summer season, okay? And so give yourself what it needs during those seasons. Give yourself the rest that you need during the leading up to your period, because that can also really contribute to things going overboard. When we moved into our new house here, this is like our almost 3 months that we've been in here. And here's how I know, because we moved in during the week of my period. And I was like so excited to move in. I was like, I can handle it. I can do it. I'll just take it a little bit slower. And my husband was like pushing back on it. He was like, no, like it's okay. Just slow down. And it wasn't because I was starting my period. I forget. He had this thing in his mind, like, I don't want to move in before we're fully finished with the house. And we were fully finished with the house. There were just some touch-ups that were coming in. Like the painters were coming back, touching up a few things, door handles, like just little things. Like everything was done. There were just some touch-ups that needed to happen. I was like, no, everything's done. We're moving in. We've been in a 900 square foot home for 3.5 years. We're moving. And sure enough, I spiraled out of control a few days after my period started because I had overdone it and I was extremely exhausted, extremely tired, and I lost it on my husband. I didn't lose it on my husband. I lost it about myself to my husband. Does that make more sense? And all of the self-hatred words came out of my mouth, and that's what I said. And it was sad because I let myself get there, because I didn't just wait a few more days and allow myself to rest and then come back with full energy so that I could move into the house without anger and resentment and control and all of the things that I didn't want to experience. Okay. So just saying, don't plan big projects on the week of your period if you can help it. And if you can't help it, then you're still going to have to give yourself some grace and room to rest, especially if you're like me, day 1 is not so bad, but day 2 and day 3, I have to rest, especially day 2. I can sometimes get by on day 3 and maybe sometimes on day 1, but for about 3 days, you're going to have to rest. You're going to have to just bite the bullet and accept it and lean into it. And when you do, things will be much better. So that's my question to you. Where have you been told to just push through when your body may be asking for something specific instead? Okay. Those are the things I want to leave with you. I've also left you lots of nutritional options in here. If you feel like you're dealing with copper specifically, you heard me talk about how copper can be stuck in the tissues. And so just because you're experiencing PMDD doesn't mean that you actually have high or low copper. It's not pointing to one thing specific. It could be many things going on. And so my suggestion isn't to go out there and either stop all copper supplements or take a bunch of copper supplements, because it's just not how it works. Stress is a huge factor in it. So hence the questions that I just posed to you. And so I just want this to land with hope. I want it to land with encouragement. I want it to land as a testimony that you don't have to suffer from PMS or PMDD, either one, but especially not PMDD. You can come out of it. And if you experience these symptoms, I would love to work with you. Please reach out to me. Even if you just have some simple questions and you're not ready to work with me, I'm really glad that you're listening in, and I'm really glad that you're gaining insight as to possibly what's going on in your body, and that you're connecting with someone who's been through it as well and has come out of it. And so I encourage you with that today. And I hope that you have a good week. And I'll see you on next week's podcast episode. Bye.
Hey ladies, I hope today's episode hit you where you needed it. If it did, take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who's burnt out, praying for relief, and tired of feeling like God's strength is for everyone but her. And if you haven't yet, leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more women get the support they've been begging God for. Now I'm off to make my adrenal cocktail and do the slow, steady work that pulled me out of survival mode. I'll meet you back here next Tuesday for another episode. Bye!